minutes. If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Hello and welcome to episode 399 of Picks and Ponies right here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your proud host, Howard Kravitz, along with great friend and co-host Pete Viscos. We are here to chop up the Colonial, yes, you heard that right, the Colonial Downs late pick 4 on Saturday. They have a special 3-day meet featuring the inaugural Virginia Oaks and Virginia Derby. Pete, how you doing tonight? It's going to be very exciting times this weekend in Virginia, Colonial Downs.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's a good weekend to have it too because there's a little bit of a lull in the prep schedule, so it fits in very nicely. So good for them. I mean, it's not a track that I was trying to remember. Have we done Colonial in the past? I can't even remember. I feel like we did at least once, but I don't remember why we did it.
We've
back
done
then.
it at least once or twice for the new Arlington Million or the new
Oh,
Million.
that's right.
I know
That's
we've done
right.
it for
Yes,
at least twice. I think
that's
they've had
right.
it twice there, I recall. So yes, we
Yes,
have
now I
covered
remember.
Colonial rarely, but so rare that I don't have a background banner of Colonial. As you can see, your background. We just go to we'll go a little old school with our regular green. I sort of like that with our traditional banner there at the top. But anyway, Pete, it's gonna be a very exciting day. You said it is a quiet weekend, and it is with a great stakes comes to play. But I'll tell you what's not quiet. The National Horse Players Championship in Las Vegas is this weekend. And Pete, I don't
Yes.
know if you know this, but Colonial Downs, their entire card Friday and Saturday is part of the NHC. So
Oh, it
people
is.
will be betting at Colonial Downs or into Colonial Downs
Hey,
for the NHC, which is very. Oh, we do have Colonial Downs.
I
There we
had added
go.
one when I was going to host. I had
All
added
right.
one to our thing there, so we do have a colonial. It's
All
not
right.
that
Well,
visible, but it's good enough. We're
we'll leave that
representing.
in.
Yeah, we're
Correction meeting
representing.
in the middle of the show. All right, Pete, let's get into it. We got the late pick 4. Before we do that, really quick, of course, you can listen to us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor. The tip sheet, Pete, continues to do well. Very proud of it. We're going on, 4+ years now. Look below the video player for information on the Power Picks tip sheet. And if you're not a member, you really want to, because not only is it inexpensive and profitable, Pete, but we are going to have an NCAA bracket contest for free for the men's basketball tournament. But in order to be to participate in that contest, Pete, you gotta be a subscriber to the Power Picks tip sheet. Free money if you go ahead and subscribe, and then you can play, of course, in the contest, and also, of course, major Derby preps coming up, and of course, the Derby Noaks itself. So if you're not a subscriber, now is the time to do it. Do it through Patreon.com. You can see it on the bottom of the screen. Of course, great website as well that Pete you mainly run. We appreciate that. HHHRacingPodcast.com. All right, let me take off the welcome banner here at the top. Let's get into the late pick 4. We're just going to do the last 4 races of Colonial. Usually we do late pick 5s. The pick 5 starts with a maiden race with a bunch of firsters that we're going to skip. So we're going to get right into the late pick 4, Pete. So let me go ahead and bring it up right now on the screen so we can chop it up. Here we go. Late pick 4, Colonial Downs this Saturday starts at race 7. About 3:28 Eastern time. It's an optional allowance, 50 claimers, field of 10. The morning line favorite is the number 5. Lure him in for Walensky and Irad. A lot of the big name jocks, are at Colonial Downs this weekend as well. Let's go ahead and right to our picks there. Scrolling at the bottom of the screen, I'm going to go 8-5-3, and Pete is going 5-8-4. Pete, we'll start with you. You are going to go lure him in a Florida bred, and actually, let me just say this right away. Also, all of the races are one turn. Even the mile and eighth race,
Yeah,
the
interesting.
Virginia Derby. I don't know if you have stats, Pete, on one turn route races. I do have a stat for Colonial Downs, actually. It's a little bit misleading. We'll talk about that as we go along here. But again, all these races that we're going to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, are one turn miles, sort of reminiscent of Belmont
Yeah,
back in the day. Back in the day, we'll see they're going to be changing it, of course, the configurations and whatnot. Anyway, you can go lure him in the 5-2 more line. Pete, what do you like about this one?
Yeah, this was a race that I didn't necessarily love, but this is a horse I feel like I feel like we've talked about this horse before, and if you look, it sounds familiar. I think from the show because it was scratched out of the Gulfstream Park Mile against Mainframe last out. So this is definitely a softer spot than they were pointing towards. I don't recall. I think the scratch. I looked on here and on the scratch board, and it said. I think it just said something like stake scratch or something. So I didn't think it said anything more specific. I don't know if you know, excuse me, of a reason, but I just assumed it was a scratch, maybe for a softer spot. But this is just a horse that's. I didn't want to cut you off. Did you have anything on? You didn't see anything, right? That was all I
No,
saw.
I didn't see anything on the scratch board. Speaking of scratch, by the way, Pete's a little bit under the weather, so
Oh yeah.
bear with him.
Apologies.
Speaking
Yes.
of
Yes.
scratch, you sound fine, Pete. But in case people are wondering,
Yeah.
Pete's recovering, but he's a trooper. That's why he's here tonight.
Yes, I'm battling a bout of the flu, which kept me off the podcast last week, and is still lingering, unfortunately. So I apologize to any of the listeners if my voice cracks a bit, but that is the reason. But yeah, this was a horse. I just think since it moved back to the or moved to the Walensky barn, it's just been in pretty decent form and getting a little better. I mean, it had to drop down last time to get the win, but it did it nice. Got a pretty solid trip, and that was the first race at 8. I mean, this one's getting a little long in the tooth, but I like when a horse, sort of is still being consistent enough. He's tactical, picks up IRAD. I think there's enough speed to where this horse can just sit sort of a perfect trip and sort of get first run on maybe some of the closers. So there's just a lot to like. I mean, again, the 8-year-old, but at least he came out in his 8-year-old season and ran one of his better races in a while. So it doesn't look like the age is getting to him just yet. Yeah, and if you look on here, I feel like if he can get that trip where he's just sort of sitting in sort of a pocket trip kind of thing, then IRAD, that's perfect for an IRAD ridden horse anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. He's logical. He fits. I've got him second. I think he's gonna be less than 5-2 post time just because it's
Yeah,
IRAD and
sure.
and yada yada. But this is an 8-year-old Pete off a little bit of a layoff. I think you're supposed to try to beat this horse. I mean, he doesn't lay over this field. He's
Yeah,
going to take a lot of money. Again, now let's talk about the configuration a little bit. So it's a little bit misleading. People think, well, it's one turn. It's going to favor speed. No, in fact, it's only about 18% of Colonial Downs. I think that's over the last 5 years in these route one-turn races. And meanwhile, some other tracks similar to that, like Belmont, was actually favored speed more. There's another track I can't recall what I looked at that actually I think it was Gulfstream. Well, that should be pretty obvious. Favor
yeah,
speed more. So don't think that just as one turn this is going to favor speed. Although Pete, we really have no idea because it's the first time they've run there in a while, and
yep,
I think it would really behoove everyone to pay very close attention to the way the track is going to play starting Thursday. We are filming this, by the way, on Wednesday night, so we don't know how the track is going to be playing, obviously, but we'll have to pay attention to that. Two
yeah,
Eagles River, Pete, is my top choice. Stretching out, I don't mind that. The distance, if you look at the top right there, 3 starts at the distance, twice in the money. And I didn't want to do that, but that's okay. What I find, Pete, is sometimes these horses as they get older, they don't mind stretching out. Now, certainly 5 years old is not old, but my point is that, when you see these horses closing at a 6 furlong, that puts them in a more tactical position going a mile. And what I notice about the number 8-2 Eagles River is if you expand all the way down to all of his lines, early in his career, he was running a mile and doing it well. So, and he used to be like a mile. Oh, that was not the right horse. Sorry. He used to be a miler type.
yeah.
So I don't mind. Let's see. Here we go. Here we go. I mean, he ran 2 of his best races going a mile at Oaklawn, Pete.
I mean, shoot,
So,
he jumped into the
and a
Arkansas
mile and eighth.
Derby, right? Yeah, I
He
mean,
was
that
in,
was
yeah, he was in the
crazy.
damn Arkansas Derby against Angel of Empire. So, I mean, if you want to say, well, he might want to get the distance, I'm going to respectfully disagree with that. I actually like this horse stretching back out. It's not the most clever opinion, but hey, I would take 5-1. Machado's excellent maker, and he figures to sit that same kind of similar trip piece that your horse, the number 5. I also threw the 3 in there. We're not really going to talk about these horses too much. Winston Wolf, I think, is a little bit interesting for Amos. Again, he's got numbers that fit. He's 12 to 1 morning line. I think it's a wide open race in general.
Yeah.
You've got Hey Chief for Hugh McMahon and Wes Hamilton coming off a layoff off the claim in for 50. It has been working pretty steadily at Laurel, including how about that Breeze, a mile 148, trying to get some
Yeah.
stamina into him. I think
Yeah.
it's a pretty wide open race, Pete. I don't think we should, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with your pick at all. Don't get the wrong impression. But from a win perspective, or hey, let's talk about NHC. If you're playing the NHC and this happens to be a mandatory, which we don't know the mandatory races for Saturday, if this was like an optional race that you could play it if you wanted to, I certainly would not play the 5 at like 9 to 5
No,
in an
God,
optional
no.
situation,
Definitely not. No,
right?
definitely not. And
Yeah,
honestly, if this was an optional for me, I didn't like this race all that much. I had about 5 A's and mostly just tossed everybody else. And that meant to me, boy, that I just thought that they were all pretty even, and
yep,
they're not super consistent horses. Some of them are consistent figure wise, but not result wise. So in that case, if you can grab a price, you might as well do it.
I agree. Let's go to the 2 major races of the day. The first one is race 9, and it is the Virginia Oaks. Pete, this is 50 points to the winner for the Kentucky Oaks. $250,000 is the purse. It's a mile and a 16th. And I hate to repeat myself, but again, that is a one turn mile 16th. It's a very long run down the backstretch, Pete, which really, I think, in a weird way, actually makes it more of a jockey race instead of less. I know a lot of people would disagree because hey, there's a turn coming up. Sometimes when there's not a turn, Pete, that almost to me actually creates more indecisiveness. So it's gonna be
Yeah.
interesting. The morning line favorite here, let me go back to it, is the number 3 Gowls Delight for McPeak. He's got 2. Gowls Delight is gonna be ridden by first call Brian Hernandez, while CJ Hernandez rides the other McPeak. Anonima, who's 6 to 1. Let's go ahead and put our picks on the screen. I'm going 8-3-5. Pete, you're going 3-8-4. So we are thinking very similarly here. You're going the Gowls Delight. This horse we've talked about on this show, a horse that I've actually liked a little bit in the past. Last time ran into a complete monster, Pete, in Good Cheer. Someone had to finish second in that race, and it
Yeah.
happened to be Gowls Delight. But you think she might cross the finish line first on Saturday?
Yeah, it's funny. You and I reversed the exactas in the first 2 legs. That's hopefully that
Interesting.
bodes well for our top 2 and whoever plays our picks. But yeah, this is this may be a play. Potentially. I don't like to spoil anything. There might be a little bit of a play on our tip sheet for this horse potentially.
Ooh,
But
okay.
this is a horse I know you and I liked. I think 2 back in the Martha Washington.
Yes.
And we don't have to get into replays or anything. It's not that important. But I didn't love the ride. The trip was a little funny. Got pinched back and then was just sort of out of it. But I didn't really understand what Hernandez was doing that day. And I don't know crap about riding a horse, but it just was confusing to me. And then when she came back last time, I really liked her underneath Good Cheer as just sort of a cold exacta. And I thought she did what she was supposed to do. Now I think she's just sort of facing this isn't the greatest of fields in the world. So I don't there's no I don't imagine anyone's coming out of this and winning the Oaks. Let's just say
I would
that.
agree.
So
I would
I'm going to
agree.
look at this field and think that maybe for Gal's Delight, this is more her speed in terms of the win end, maybe to get her confidence back. And I just think after the 2 back, I really liked the debut, and that's why we liked her in the Martha Washington. Then in the Rachel Alexandra, she did what she was going to do. Good Cheer's just better than she is. Then
Yeah,
she came out with a really strong work last time. So I feel like McPeak maybe just has this one really ready to run. And if she can move forward, I just think she's better. Aside from the 8, who you're going to talk about, who we don't really know much yet, I think she just might be better than these. And hopefully she can just get the kind of trip that'll display that here. That's where I'm looking for. But
Pete, you and I don't always agree, which is great for the listeners and viewers. They get different opinions. We agree here, except for the fact that I have Gowls Delight in the second. But everything you said, I agree with. You're way. It's rare for a Pete Visco to be too kind, but you are way too kind, sir, on the ride from Brian Hernandez two back. That thing was a boy. Was I pissed? I thought I was getting a nice price at 4 to 1, and What a
And
complete
I thought she had a shot too with the
she
move she
did.
could have made.
Ah,
And then I was like, well, what the hell? That's why I didn't know if it was the ride. I even watched it again today. And like, I don't know if it was the
yeah.
ride or if there's just something you can't see on the replay. So I was giving the benefit of the doubt. I was trying to be nice for
That was
once.
nice. He got sucked into going inside, and then it got checked and steadied. It was a complete disaster.
Yeah.
You're right about the work. That's a very sharp work, especially for a McPeak horse.
Yeah.
And it, ironically, speaking of McPeak, she might be peaking at the right time to get into the Kentucky Oaks. Here's my issue, and I like her, and I've got her second. I don't know how talented she is. I don't know how much upside there is. That might be a little bit of a harsh comment, but I don't know. We're going to see. I think she's going to be a major factor in this race, but I think she's a major factor in this race, Pete, because I don't love a lot of the other ones.
Well, that's where I'm
So,
at. Yeah, that is
right.
where I'm at too.
I,
Yeah.
I really, if speaking of the tip sheet, by the way, let me just say this also. I'm going to take this off the screen just for a second. Pete Visco is doing the Power Picks tip sheet this weekend because of studying that I need to do for the NHC and travel concerns. For those of you that are members of the Power Picks tip sheet, Pete is going to be doing the majority of it in terms of the price plays. So we're very looking forward to that, Pete. See what you got in the hopper. Just want to mention that so that's not a surprise for people that receive the Power Picks this Saturday morning through their email. I'll tell you what, if I were creating the Power Picks, Pete, I really like Fondly. I like this 8 a lot. It's a Graham Motion, doesn't always win first out. I thought her debut was absolutely spectacular. Now, it doesn't look spectacular on paper, and she really wasn't bet, like she was going to be something special. But there's two things I like about Fondly, who breaks in the rail. First of all, she broke fine. She's taking a bunch of dirt on the inside, and she doesn't seem to be bothered by it at all. Usually, Pete, you see a lot of times these fillies and colts, their head carriage is all weird, right? They're
Yeah.
sort of their stride doesn't look. She just looks really comfortable here on the inside. But the one thing that was most impressive, and I'm sure you saw this on the far turn, she's going to make a move up the inside here to try to get inside of the number 4. You can see it right here, and she gets like her nose in front right here. And then you see she had to study pretty hard. She
Yeah.
gets checked back. Most first time starters, Pete, this would be a lot of trouble. But she took it all in stride, literally angles out right here. And wow, I mean, she still has her momentum. The jock's going to switch, goes right handed and then switches left handed coming up here. And she's as straight as a string. And wow, this to me, this is a very impressive gallop out. She's not slowing down at all. Maybe it wasn't the most tremendous field, but I thought she did that about as well as possible, Pete. You see the
Agree.
final time there, 110 and 1. I mean, I really don't think you can ask much more out of a first time starter. She's bred to go longer. I think she's going to set a great trip. This is IRAD and Eclipse Thoroughbreds. She is a half, by the way, to a very good horse. You might remember Antiquarian from
Yeah.
last year,
Yep.
right? In the Triple Crown Trail. So she's a half to that one. I think Fondly has got a really bright future for Eclipse Thoroughbreds. I don't think we're getting 7-2, by the way. I wouldn't be shocked if this is the favorite, to be honest. I think we're getting 2-1, 9-5, maybe co-favorite with Gallows Delight. That's my opinion. We'll see. I like this horse a lot. I think she stalks off of the 3 and the 6 and gets that nice stalking trip in the outside. And I think your class is going to show, and I think she's a very classy filly. I'm going with Fondly in the Oaks. Thoughts?
No, I agree. I agree with everything you said, it was a tough choice between. I didn't love like when I was trying to choose between who maybe a top choice would be. What I thought here was maybe Gallows Delight just has a little bit of an experience edge
No
and
doubt.
has faced, and that's the only thing that
Yep.
maybe gets Fondly. But I think if Fondly is as talented as she looked in that debut, then this would be the good place to show it. And I did have a stat, Graham Motion. These were all the wins were on turf, but it still shows he's 4 for 11 wins, 7 for 11 in the money, with maiden winners last out making their second start in a non-graded stakes. Now it's generally on the turf he does it, but
Yep.
he's done it before and he's done it recently. So I do think this is definitely one. And this is, I think, the only one where if she can look great and really jumps up, say from a figure standpoint, she could maybe be the one from here that has, the Oaks. It starts getting weird timing wise, I guess, with this race. But
Yeah.
um,
which is why I think the field sizes are a little bit smaller. And I mean, because
Yeah, it's a weird.
you could run in 3 weeks. Actually, would be 4 weeks. I'm doing some
It
math.
would
One, two.
be
It would be
mm,
three. It would be three
3, I
weeks
think,
to
right?
the one.
To
Yeah, it'd be
whatever
three
the
weeks, which is a little tight, and then you'd have what 4 weeks or five to the. So it is a little bit
it's
weird.
yeah.
But I agree. I think it finally. By the way, the stat you gave was for non-grade stakes, right? And this
I
is
did
a.
non-graded
Oh,
stakes.
this
Yes,
is well. This is
these are
not
non.
graded for the simple fact that it's a new race.
It's a new race, but
Otherwise, it would be
technically,
graded. But that fair point. I'm like, you're
yeah,
wrong about that. No, actually, you're right. It's not graded, but it might as well be. Let's go
yeah,
to talk about the Virginia Derby. The Virginia Derby is, of course, the counterpart to the Oaks. It's for the boys. Winning, you're in. Basically, 50 points
yeah,
to the winner. And there's a lot of interesting storylines here with the Virginia Derby, excuse me. So let's just jump right in. The Virginia Derby is race 9 Saturday at Colonial Downs, approximately 5:10 Eastern. Now, the posted field that you see on the screen is a field of 10. However, we already know the number 2, John Hancock for Cox, is definitely not going. He's going to be going into the Louisiana Derby. They're going to shift him there. Cox does have another one in this race, number 7, Rapture. So with John Hancock out, Pete, that means two things. That really means there's much less pace in the race, although there still is plenty of pace in my opinion. But
yeah.
it does take out a big speed horse, and it frankly probably would take out one of the favorites in this race as well. So these morning lines are definitely going to be different, is my main point that I want to make there, Pete. Let's go to our picks. I'm going to go a little off the radar here. I'm going 9, 7, 8, and Pete's going 6, 7, 8. Pete, I have a very, very, very strong opinion in this race, and you and I, my friend, someone's going to be extremely happy with Pete, uh, or happy with me, but it ain't going to be both because I am totally against Getaway Car in this race. So I'd love to hear what your opinions are on Getaway Car. We see 9-5 for Baffert and Irad. You can forget that. This score is going to be even money, 4-5. So he's going to be much lower than that. He's talented. He's got a lot of speed. You know, Irad's going to send. Irad does not ride for Baffert often. We talked about that on the show, but it's obviously he's riding here not for any negative reasons. It's all positive reasons. What
Yeah.
do you like about Getaway Car, who is, again, quick and accomplished in the mile and eighth? Let me bring that up. Mile and eighth, $500,000 Virginia Derby. Again, a very long run into the only turn. It's going to start all the way at the end of the backstretch. Go
Yeah, and
ahead,
it's
Pete.
funny
Getaway
because
Car.
this is a horse that before when you hear Getaway Car is going to be there, I'm like, oh, that's not a horse that I really like that much. I don't really have, he's not a horse in the Baffert barn that I would think of
No.
as, oh, that's a horse that I can think of as a Derby contender, or one that I think it's more of a D team, or I don't even know in his barn what the hell
He's
you would even.
he's the horse that like gets the feed last. He's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they're
He's
they're
the
all in the
runt of the
stall like waiting
litter.
for the
Yeah.
food, and Getaway Car's like, what about me, man? Barnes gets his like food first, and anyway,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Citizen Bull
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
he is definitely not getting. He is definitely the runt of the, and not necessarily by size, but just on
Not a bad
reputation.
run. He's won almost 600,000, by the
I
way.
was going to say, but that's the thing that when I started looking at
Crazy.
the race, and again, I will let you talk about your horses. When I start looking at it, I go, you know what though? Getaway Car, he takes a lot of crap as not being sort of the top Baffert, but he's actually pretty good. And he's not great by any stretch. He's not great, but this isn't a great field, just like we talked about with the Oaks. This isn't the best field, but you see, he's knocking heads. I mean, the loss and the Del Mar Futurity to Gaming and Citizen Bull, and he loses
Yeah,
to Citizen Bull again. Then in the Juvenile, I mean, nobody ran great. Citizen Bull and Gaming kind of ran away, and
yep,
he didn't run terrible. Then he comes back and he loses to Journalism, who is
no doubt.
probably the Derby favorite right now, or at least close to it. And,
Yep,
and then he holds on. He comes back off a little bit of a layoff, holds on in the in the Sunland Derby, and that was actually just sort of again, not the best field, but it was just pretty gritty, and he showed a lot of heart, and I kind of
yep,
like that. So when I'm looking at it, going, is this not a race that Baffert's just maybe going to come here? He's going to have maybe the best horse, not the greatest horse again, not this isn't going to springboard him to a win in the Derby or anything. But
no.
is he just the best horse here, and he's got Irad up, and is he just going to outclass them on the front end, which is what Baffert horses are known to do. And that's where I landed. And that is not a very definitive or strong case to make. But when I look at it, I go, this is just sort of what Baffert and some of his horses wind up doing.
I can't argue with a lot of what you said, other than I don't think he's as talented as you. Well, you didn't say that he's overly talented, but
No, I'm not.
I
He's
just
not. He's
he's
talented
accomplished.
relative. He's
He's
accomplished.
accomplished. Here's my opinion, Pete. He's accomplished by default, which sounds really rude. I mean, you and I would both love to have a
Oh,
piece of this
shoot.
horse,
Yeah.
obviously. But you know what? A few things in play here. Number one, Citizen Bull was supposed to go to this race, got a fever, and they decided to send Getaway Car instead. So to me, this is more of an afterthought. I don't like that right off the jump. Number two, look at these works, Pete. Now, I have not watched these works. For a Baffert to go, uh, 50 and one handily, going four, and then 36 and handily, I mean, it doesn't even look on paper like he's got this horse ready to go. Now, you and I both know workouts are workouts. Baffert's not going to send a horse that's not, quote unquote, ready to run. The whole vibe here is just bad for me. And not only that, Pete, there's a lot of speed in this race. Now, look, maybe Getaway Car, maybe it's going to be speed favoring. Maybe Getaway Car will just, go to the lead and be that good, or just outclass them, like you said. It's very possible, but according to time form, and again, the 2 is not in this race. Keep that in mind, everyone. So according to time form, even with John Hancock out, Pete, they've got Getaway Car in a comfortable spot, but in a fast pace in third, which is not a place that he normally is. So it feels like this horse needs to be on the lead. Now, he is outside of the 3, but he's not outside of the 8. And Rapture, the 7, is going to be stalking probably not too far off. So I just don't like the fast-paced designation with a horse that I don't think is overly talented, and a horse, in my opinion, that's really not even supposed to be there in the first place. So that's my only pushback, Pete. You could be
Fair
absolutely
enough.
right.
No, that is all
You could
fair.
be right. I just, especially at 4 to 5, I mean,
Yeah.
no bueno for me. So you know what I did, Pete? I went a different direction, and people watch the show knows, I go with prices sometimes, and they work out, a decent amount. Sometimes they don't. Last week I touted a horse and I got Rosario last week, Pete, with the ride by Joel Rosario on a Clement Eternal Silence, who actually I thought really ran well to run fourth. All I needed him to do, or her to do, is finish in the money. And anyway, that's past history. So
Yeah.
render judgment. There's a few things I like, Pete. First of all, this horse has the ability to close a little bit. He's not a dead closer, but he is going to pass horses in the lane. Look at the last 2 races, actually last 3 races, what I want to focus on, Pete. 3 back in the Kentucky Jockey Club, it was a slow pace. He had no chance against First Resort and Jonathan's Way. The horses up front ran better. 2 back in the Gun Runner, he ran against Built and Magnitude, who went back to Freak in the last race. That was a slow pace. And then his last race, we all know what Magnitude did. The only horse that really made a close was Chunk of Gold, if you remember, and
Yeah.
no one else really closed. So this is the first race in a while that he's going to see a fast pace, in my opinion, Pete, number 1. Number 2, he puts the blinkers on. He seems to run in spots. There's no reason to show replays, but Pete, he's not goofy. He's not the full package yet. He reminds me a little bit of a poor man's oh geez, I'm drawing blank. The Gulfstream Park Ian Wilkes horse that didn't run well
Oh,
last
the
time.
Burnham Square.
Yeah, he reminds me like a little bit of a Burnham Square, where there's more to it than what it looks like, and he's not the final package. He puts blinkers on, McPeak. He's been working well. He's going to stalk on the outside. He's going to be 8-10 to 1. I just don't want Getaway Car. I think there's a lot of speed. There's other closers I don't like. Hernandez is riding. I don't know. It's a little bit of a flyer. I'm going to admit that. Is he a little bit slow? Yes. But according to the time form, if you take Getaway Car out of the mix, Pete, he's really on par with almost everyone else in this race, including Rapture. And I
Yeah.
know Rapture is going to take a ton of money, and he should. We have him second. He's not going to be 5 to 1. This horse is going to be, what, 5 to 2, Pete? He's going to take a lot of money.
Oh yeah, he's going to take a ton.
His last race, he won by 6, and he did it really well. But based on the clock, it's nothing that blows you away. Can he improve? Will he improve? Probably yes and yes. But I got to tell you, I don't think Render Judgment is that far off of Authentic Gallop. He's not that far off a Rapture. He's not that far off the number 3, who I think is going to take a decent amount of money, American Promise, who absolutely has to be on the send this time. If this horse is not sending this time, I don't know why the hell he's in the race, because I was pissed with Asmussen last time. He should have been sending from the rail last time, and he really didn't.
Yeah, that sort of screwed that whole
Right,
race
Pete?
up.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think render judgment is really that far off, and I'm getting a price. That's where I'm going to go. A little bit of a stab, though, I will admit.
No, I actually had that horse as a B, so I had it sort of
Okay.
in the same vein that you're talking about, where because this is one of those where if it's not Getaway Car or Rapture, it's pretty much anything can happen, especially
Yep.
if the pace heats up. So
I'm going to show
I'm
Rapture's
with you.
replay. Don't mean to step over you, but you can go ahead
No,
and keep
no,
talking.
please.
This is Rapture's main win, which I thought was very impressive there. He's the 7 stalking on the actually, he's the 11, excuse
He's
me,
the
stalking on the outside. Go ahead.
yes, yep. No, he looked pretty good doing it again. It wasn't the toughest trip in the world. It wasn't necessarily well, at least the debut. So he lost the debut, was a next out winner, and then was
Yes.
fourth in the Risen Star. And then this one, he sort of figured everything out. He did pick up Lasix last time and doesn't have it here. Again, we like to
Yeah.
mention that. We have no idea if that means anything
True.
one way or the other.
True.
Brad Cox, 31%. I mean, his percentages are great in everything. Maiden
Yep.
winners last out in non-graded stakes on dirt. So he can obviously do this. He picks up Pratt, so you know that's going to take money. He just looks like he's probably the upside horse
Yeah.
here, I would imagine, similar to what we talked about with Fondley in the last one.
Agreed.
So if a horse is going to come out of it, sure. I mean, it's Cox and Pratt and talent, and it's a 300K horse, so we're not exactly breaking ground here. But I
No.
do think that he's one that you hope runs well because we always just like to see talented horses run well in the
For
end.
sure. And the number 8 Authentic Gallops could take some money as well. It's a fascinating race, and I'm sure we're gonna have thousands upon thousands of people watching this video once we put it up. So maybe I shouldn't say too much about the NHC, but I'm assuming this is gonna be an optional race. I have a hard time believing they'll make this mandatory, Pete, because the field size is not that big. Yours truly will be playing this as an optional. I just let me just say that mainly because I'm going to get a price trying to
Yeah,
be getaway car. I'm not exactly sure who I'm going to play yet, but it's not going to be getaway car, and I feel like I'm going to get a price. So I might be playing this race at the NHC in
that'd be
Vegas.
a
All right,
good
let's
call.
go to the last race, Pete, to close out the pick 4 right now. Last race is an allowance race, $80,000 a purse, mile on the 16th. 3-year-olds and up. Of course, all these races are on the dirt. They'll be on the turf at Colonial soon enough. Morning line favorite, another big morning line favorite. And wow, this is an interesting horse. The number 6, Supreme Law, Jamie Ness, Michael Sanchez, 6-5 morning line. Where are we going to go? I'm saying no bueno again with a favorite. I'm going 1-2-6. Pete's going 6-7-2. Pete, Supreme Law, boy, is that name apropos? Not only has this horse been like good, he hasn't been great. He has been supreme. Out of nowhere on 2 muddy tracks, this horse is either going to freak again or disappoint at 4-5. You're going to go with maybe not freak, but at least get the job done.
Well, it's funny because again, not to tip the tip sheet, but there's a horse that I played against Supreme Law on the tip sheet, even though I
Interesting.
put Supreme Law on
I like
top.
that, Pete.
Yeah, and it's sort of it's more in your vein of sort of an underneath horse where I think we could get a price, and if we can beat this horse, great.
Okay.
But like you said, there's a couple things. I mean, I sent you guys this when I was handicapping the race. I sent the screenshot. Like this is one of the crazier, even though it's Jamie Ness, and Jamie Ness has had some crazy turnarounds in his career, I will say. This one was pretty outlandish. And I guess the only two things you can look at, like you said, is the two of them were stretching out had been sprinting before that, and they were in the mud and maybe the mud, but he was 0 for 3 he was 0 for 3 on the board on wet tracks before this. So it's not like, oh, all of a
Right.
sudden they put him in the mud. So who the hell knows? I mean, this horse, if he does what he did the last 2, this race is over. And there's no
No
point in even
doubt.
talking about it. But
No doubt.
if he doesn't, and if getting him on a fast track and I don't know. Whatever's gotten into him goes away, then he will. Then I think he's a horse
You
that
don't mean that
obviously.
literally, do you? If you
No, I
no.
don't. I don't do that. I don't like
Okay.
to suppose about whether people
Yeah,
are
yeah,
doing
yeah.
things. That's not my way. But just whatever whatever fountain of youth he may have found in his 6-year-old year,
Uh,
or late five, if that goes away, the horse that you see before that is, I don't even know what he would be in this field. I mean, yeah, you go back to like an 89 buyer down there, but look at those 58, 67, 65. You're talking about just run of the mill, regular old horse here. If that horse shows up, he's definitely beatable.
well, and Pete, this race is like similar to the Virginia Derby, and people are like, Howard, what are you talking about? That's a Derby prep. A big favorite in who wants the lead into a fast pace projected.
Yeah.
I believe in time form. It doesn't always. We all know, Pete. It doesn't always pan out, right? I mean, we've seen that
No.
1,000 times. But I got to go by what I see. I don't know if he can sit off a fast pace. I don't know. Now maybe he just gets the lead again in wires. The 3 and the 5 are supposed to go. I don't know. There's too many things here, Pete, that I don't like about the number 6 Supreme. Sorry, Law. And again, that being said, Supreme Law might win by 8. I don't know. If the pace heats up a little bit, I like Michael Licious. Michael Licious to me is a solid closer who's been on the tapete in the last 3, going a mile and a quarter. So you know one thing about this horse, Pete, he's got to be in good shape, right? The distance not a
Yeah.
problem. He's run perfectly fine on the dirt, right? I mean 78, 79, 78. His time form and buyers are even if not better than a lot of people in this field. He's the best closer on paper in the race. I'm not too concerned about the rail at this track, going the distance. It's a little bit of a quicker turnaround. I don't love that. It's like less, what is it, a few weeks, but I'm going to trust that Maker wouldn't put him here if he doesn't have a chance. And I just think this thing could fall apart. And then I've got the 2 passing game in second. And my thought here, Pete, is here's one that doesn't have to be on the lead. Only 3 lifetime starts, is improving, has good works. And do we really think Flavian's going to stick around for a race at the end to lose? And you've got this horse third. So I don't know, Pete. I just, the 6s in the last 2 races, I'm hoping neither one of them wins. Who the heck knows? I don't trust either one of them. I don't know who I trust less, Getaway Car or the Supreme Law, but I just don't like either one of them, especially based on their low prices.
Well, I mean, and if you're playing the late pick 4, or you stretch it to a pick
Absolutely.
5, and if you can beat those 2, you're in pretty good shape. Yeah, and that
Oh,
2
no
horse
doubt.
500K. I'll say real quick, the 7 Deadpan is one that on paper looks a little funny.
Mm-hmm.
Hasn't run on the dirt yet, but that is my sort of sneaky horse in here. There's a lot of
I
there's
took a
some
look at him.
there's basically is a foal to calibrate who's won, who actually placed and ran third in some
Yes.
graded stakes going long on the dirt, and actually won, some
Yeah.
non-graded stakes on the dirt. Sire, on both sides, distorted humor and excuse me, glamour and style,
Good
both
point.
have pretty solid dirt pedigree. And a nice stat that I like, Brittany Russell, who's picking this horse up for the first time. Now, again, a lot of this happens maybe at Laurel and some of the tracks where she's a little bit more prevalent, but she's 36% first time after trainer switch going from turf to dirt, and 71% in the money. And it was a pretty good size sample size too. So I'm looking at it going, even if the 6 does win, if I can get this horse to hit the board, and maybe we can get another price horse like you're talking about underneath, maybe you can
Yeah.
hit it vertically, if nothing else. Or like we said, if the 6 just craps the bed and just isn't any good, now let's blow this thing up a little bit and see what we can get.
I like that idea. I looked at Deadpan, working well, only 4 years old, certainly in the mix for sure. P, let's go to the best bets. You're going to race 8, which is the Virginia Oaks. You're going to play a pick 3, 3, 4, 8 with 6, 7, with 6, 7, and then you're going to go to the last race, and you're going to exact a Dutch 6, 7. Why don't you just quickly explain what a Dutch bet is for people who do not know?
Yeah, and that's basically where you bet the exacta straight both ways in order in the denomination that'll allow it to pay the same amount
Right.
if you hit either one. So I'm doing that with that 6 horse and the 7 deadpan that I was talking about. And then the pick 3 is just sort of self-explanatory, nothing special there.
I like it. I'm going to mess around with Render Judgment for my as one of my best bets. First, I'm going to go to race 8. I really like the outside. Is it Fondly? Is that the name?
Fondly, yes.
I
yes.
am fond of Fondly.
Fondly.
I really like her. It's probably the one horse I'm interested to see run the most at Colonial from a future perspective. I mean, there's other horses I like at prices, but I think Fondly could be something special. We'll see. In the Oaks, I'll put a win bet there. It's got to be at least. It's got to be at least 2-1. I don't know if I'm going to get that, but that's what I'm hoping for. I would take 2-1 on the win end on Fondly. I think it's mainly a 2-horse race personally. And then trifectas, I'm going to reverse tri-key with the 9. I'm going to put Render Judgment, the 9 on top with 3, 6, 7, 8 with 3, 6, 7, 8. I'm also going to go put him in second, 3, 7, 8 with 9 with 3, 6, 7, 8. Notice I do not have Getaway Car on top in my tries. And then I'll put Render Judgment in third, 3, 7, 8 with 3, 6, 7, 8 with 9. So I'm going Render Judgment, Pete, in all 3 places and trying to get him in the mix. Pete's a lot of fun. Late pick 4 Colonial Saturday. Any final thoughts?
No, it's nice that we're representing the DMV down here every once in a while. We don't get down to our tracks aside from the the Preakness and a little bit of Colonial. So it's nice. I welcome everyone down to my neck of the woods. It's
there
beautiful.
You go.
Yeah.
Yeah. How far is that from you? Not very far, right? Do you
it's
know?
Far enough.
It's
yeah.
in New Kent, Virginia.
Yeah, it's far enough. It's not like,
okay.
Hey, let me just zip over to Colonial real quick. You have to sort of make a day of it if you were doing it. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun, and good luck to also all the players involved in the NHC in Vegas. We do not have a live show Thursday, Great Race Plays, which we usually have Thursday nights at 9:30 for the Saturday Late Pick 4 for Sunday. We had to postpone it because of Pete's health and people traveling and whatnot. So we will be back next week, Pete, and Paul will be there as well for, guess what, episode 400 of Picks and Ponies next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, our normal time. For our good friend and co-host Pete Visco, this has been your host, Howard Kravitz, episode 399 of Picks and Ponies. Crush your bets at Colonial Downs for their Late Pick 4 on Saturday. Take care, everyone. Have a great
bring
night.
home the NHC championship.
We'll try, my friend. Take care.
If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.